Now I've got some vague memories from my childhood in the 70s, you know. I can remember that kind of era where I'd watch the news and there'd be like a map of North and South Vietnam, and I knew there was a war going on, but you know what it's like at that age, you don't really know anything. It doesn't mean a lot to you, to be quite honest, you know. I can remember watching a documentary that showed the fall of Saigon. I've got specific memories of that. Now, within days of that happening in April of 1975, this place, Phnom Penh, was taken over by the Khmer Rouge. Now, of course, when the Khmer Rouge marched in to Phnom Penh in 1975, the first thing they did was round up all the people and march them out of the city. And then they went on a purge through the people, and they targeted people like political enemies and anybody they considered to be a threat. And this included like anybody who was remotely intellectual. Now, if you were guilty of being something as vague as an intellectual, there was a good chance that you'd end up in this place, Toul Sleng interrogation camp. Absolutely horrific place.
So these rooms are more or less just exactly as they were found when the Vietnamese entered. There's some of the pictures on those walls, which I think you can't really see from here because of reflections, but they're not very pleasant pictures. These ammunition boxes were used as latrines. An absolutely spooky place. Now, there are tourists wandering around, but one thing I've noticed is that everybody's just quiet, everybody's just silent. I think that the thoughts and the imagery that this place evokes is just beyond words. So they were brought here, they were interrogated, and then they were taken in trucks to the killing fields, which is over 10 kilometres away. Now what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk, as closely as I can, I'm going to follow that route that they took, and I'm going to walk to the killing fields. Right, that's it, we're underway. I'm just going to be following Google Maps. It says here that it's going to take me over 2 hours, and I'll probably stop off once or twice on the way. Intensely hot. I don't think zebra crossings have got quite the same significance in this part of the world.
these junctions are just absolute chaos. You just do not have a clue which way to go, really. You're just full of the old adage about walk straight ahead and let them go around you. And I've gone the wrong way. And keep your fingers crossed. So we're going to follow the river for a bit. And for a while I'm out that traffic, I've got time to hear myself think. And one thing that really crosses my mind is, you know, like, how could these people commit all these atrocities? I mean, you know, I really love the Khmer people. They come across to me as really kind of like polite and humble. And you do kind of wonder what it took to make some of them turn against each other like that. Now, of course, the Khmer Rouge love children, you know, probably because they saw them as being, to their way of thinking, uncorrupted by what went on before, you know, and easily influenceable. But, you know, like, it was just horrifying, some of the things they got children to do, you know, ranging from just kind of like being snitches to putting them in charge. Or I've even heard that they had them murdering people at the killing field. When I got a tuk-tuk this morning from Riverside and told them that I was going to the Toul Sleng Genocide Museum, you know, the first thing he said to me, was, you know, oh, you're going to the killing fields afterwards, I'll wait for you. And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to the killing fields afterwards, but I'm going to walk there. And he says, no, you can't walk there. He said, it's a long way. I said, yeah, I know, I'm going to walk there. And I think I've had about 5 or 6 tuk-tuk drivers ask me where I'm going since then, and I tell them I'm going to walk there, and they just, you know, they said, no, it's impossible. Now, of course, in this part of the world, they're not that keen on walking, and, you know, but the stares I get, they just look at me like I'm crazy. I don't know, yeah, maybe they've got a point. Oh, the river doesn't look that clean, but it is actually nice and peaceful. It's a real relief to get away from those main roads. Hello. How are you?
How are you?
Now, many years ago, I read a book about a lady who survived the Khmer Rouge years, and eventually she hiked out, did a very dangerous hike out to Thailand, and it was a fascinating book. But one thing I remember she said that was, throughout it all, you know, I can't, you know how long it was, 4 or 5 years, she said that her family managed to keep hold of some gold. You know, I just thought, God, how did they keep that hidden for all those years? And one thing she said, which I've never read anywhere else and kind of really surprised me, she said that the Khmer Rouge wouldn't actually search them. You know, they saw it as an undignified thing to do. So, you know, and I just find that so kind of contradictory, you know, all the things they did do to them, you know, ultimately quite often killing them, torturing them, killing them, but apparently they wouldn't put them through the indignity of a search. Wow, just when I thought the going was getting easy, looks like it's about to get a bit tougher. Look at this. Obviously there's been flooding all over this bit of Southeast Asia, and here's no exception. I have to work my way through there. Oh, I can get up here, can't I? Good idea, Cole. Whoa! Oh dear. Hello. I'm sure he meant that in the best possible taste. There you go, he's earning his money, he is. Now, of course, when the Khmer Rouge entered Phnom Penh in April 1975, the first thing they did was march everybody out from the city into the countryside. You know, they sent them all over the countryside where they got them working, growing rice and crops. And I often wondered how it was that they never, you know, they were always starving, but they were growing crops. Well, the answer is that the Khmer Rouge would sell the rice and use it to buy weapons and other things they needed. So the people who were growing it never actually got the benefit of it themselves. According to Google Maps, I've got to follow this till it reaches the main road. Must admit, it looks like a bit of a dead end. Hopefully it jigs around that corner when the bikes have just come from. Well, the route that Google says is there is most definitely not there, so I'm just going to have to see if I can piece one together myself. Hello.
Hello.
Head north. I'll get the compass out. Oh God, what shall I do? Shall I follow it round the edge of the water, or shall I'll move a bit further out? I've got a feeling I'll be leading myself into a trap down there. Take a bigger loop. Here we are on the main road. I'll tell you what, I am hot now and thirsty. I'm going to look, see if there's somewhere I can get myself a cold drink. Oh, there's a little shop and they've got cold drinks. Yes! Get myself a cold drink. I think I'll get one of these energy drinks if I got one. Oh, and they got a Pockery Sweat, which I love. If you're ever in this part of the world, believe you me, this is the best electrolyte there is. Brilliant stuff, love it. And one of my favourite energy drink, that'll do me. Hello. Right. Thank you. Sorry, how much? Bram môi, mui pi bay bram. Now it's quite pleasant as I walk along here. You know, it's most people seem really friendly, smiley, happy. Perhaps a little bit puzzled as to what a crazy foreigner's doing marching out in the midday sun. But by and large, they're all friendly. And it's quite a thought that if I was here 45 years ago, it would have meant certain death. And of course, locals weren't the only victims of the Khmer Rouge. There were some foreigners who were caught and processed through their routine and ultimately killed. Now, there's a book I read a few years ago called Foxy Lady. You know, I think you can get it as an e-book, you know, Kindle, something like that. And it's well worth a read. You know, it's about, I think it was Australians and some English guys who kind of hired a boat and were cruising around Thailand and Malaysia and around that area. And they managed to infringe upon Khmer waters and they were seized by the Khmer Rouge. Now, their boat was attacked and they believe that one of them was killed instantly, but the others were eventually taken to Toul Sleng prison and interrogated and eventually executed. So it's well worth looking that book up. It's called Foxy Lady. I'm pretty sure you can get it on Kindle. Right, out onto one of the big main roads. And this is one of two major routes that would certainly have been used by the Khmer Rouge to transport their prisoners from Toul Sleng on their final journey to the killing fields. And one thing that really reinforces the craziness of it all to me, you know, when I think back at everything that went on at Toul Sleng, was the way they meticulously record everything. You know, they'd take their pictures, they torture them and extract confessions. You know, who was going to believe those confessions anyway? And under what paradigm of justice or fairness would their confessions, even if they were true, justified what they did to them? You know, to me it just sort of like, it's just another of craziness on top of the overall craziness of this all. And you can imagine how them prisoners felt on that final journey. You know, they would have been coming along here, trussed up in the back of trucks. There would have been no other traffic on the road. You know, the city was empty and they were moved around in the middle of the night. But they would have no doubt been in Toul Sleng for weeks, if not months. And they would have seen other trucks filling up with prisoners, or hear them filling up in the middle of the night and departing. And they knew none of them trucks ever came back. Now, if you look back at the story of the Khmer Rouge and its leaders, you know, obviously Pol Pot, and another figure that crops up is that of Hun Sen, who was originally a member of the Khmer Rouge and until very recently was the Prime Minister of Cambodia. And you look at the way that they were just totally stricken with paranoia. You know, they were paranoid about anybody who opposed them politically. They were paranoid about anybody who even had a decent education, really. They perceived as a threat. And then, of course, once they'd ravaged the people, they turned upon each other. You know, Pol Pot was ordering executions left, right and centre. They were all fearing for their lives, and in fact Hun Sen defected to Vietnam. Now, some people present it as, well, you know, he feared for his life, so he ran, which, well, you know, I suppose in a way that's understandable. But one good thing that came of that was that it led to the Vietnamese invasion of Cambodia in 1979, which history has got to put down as a kind of liberation, because it ended up liberating Cambodia from the Khmer Rouge government. But, you know, it's just the final thought, the final madness of it all was just that they couldn't even trust each other. Now, I mentioned earlier the deaths of Westerners at the hands of the Khmer Rouge. Now, that didn't just start when the Khmer Rouge invaded Phnom Penh in April 1975. A very interesting story is the story of Sean Flynn, who was the son of the famous actor Errol Flynn. Now, Sean Flynn grew up with his father's sense of adventure, and he did have a brief career as a movie star himself, but then he wanted to become a photojournalist, and he was a very adventurous one. And he worked for Time Life magazine, and he went to Vietnam with another group of journalists, and they were very adventurous. You know, they put themselves in all kinds of situations on the front line and everything. And at the beginning of 1970, he came to investigate the situation in Cambodia, you know, where the Khmer Rouge were active already at that time. Now, in April of 1970, there was a meeting off of Highway 1, quite near to the Vietnamese border. and they laid on cars for all the journalists to go to this meeting. But Sean Flynn and another journalist called Dana Stone decided to ride their own motorcycles. They had motorcycles, so they rode down there. After the conference was over, everybody else was going to head back, but they'd heard reports that Khmer Rouge had been spotted like about a kilometre further on towards the border. So they rode down on their bikes to investigate. Now there was a kind of roadblock in the road ahead of them. I believe a couple of journalists, Japanese perhaps, had been kidnapped there the day before, and they could see this roadblock, and they could see the presumably Khmer Rouge soldiers, but they decided to go and investigate. And there's actually video footage exists of them talking to some other journalists and saying, yeah, we're going to go back there, and that was the last they were ever seen. That was the 6th of April 1970. Now Sean Flynn's mother never gave up the search for him until I think it was 1994 when she declared him dead in absentia. But absolutely fascinating story, and I believe there was a film made of it called The Road to Freedom, which I've never managed to get hold of a copy of. I'd love to see, but absolutely fascinating story. Now, another sad thing about the whole affair was, of course, that the Western world knew what was going on. You know, we knew what was going on, but the timing of it was incredible. You know, the Khmer Rouge invaded Phnom Penh just a matter of days after the Americans pulled out of Saigon, and of course America had its fingers burned, and nobody wanted to get involved. You know, just nobody wanted to get involved. So the whole tragedy was allowed to unfold. Now, it's a very cold scientific way of looking at things, but I remember thinking in 1996, you know, just kind of like 17 years or so after it happened, how the gaps that had been ripped open in Khmer society were obvious. I mean, you think about it, a whole generation of the nation's educated people had been wiped out, you know. I mean, just looking at it at a genetic level, you know, just think what it must have done. Now, I mean, I don't find that anywhere near so obvious today. You've had a generation or two come along, but believe you me, back then the gaps were obvious. So this was it, the last few hundred metres of their final journey. Now, I can remember on my first visit in 1996, all this road was all still dirt track. And in fact, I remember myself and my friend Bill came out on a motorcycle. We had trouble finding it, you know. We had to keep stopping asking people. Remember, there was no internet then, you know, certainly nothing like Google Maps. I think we might have had a paper map. And I just remember we used to have to stop off and ask a few people. And I have still got a few pictures from that visit, which I'll try to find and post up. So this was it. This was the end of the line after the journey, trussed up in the back of a truck of 10 to 15 kilometres. They'd arrive here. Now, what would it have been like? Well, even on my first visit, all these roads were like mud track, so there wouldn't have been much here, to be honest. There would have been hardly anybody here, probably the sound of generators operating the floodlights in the killing fields. Who knows what was going through their minds at that time? It must have been absolutely awful. The dark and gloomy detention. Here it was, the place where the victims were transported from Toul Sleng S21 and other places in the country to be detained. Usually when the truck arrived, the victims were executed immediately. Sunday, as the number of victims to be executed was increased up to over 300 per day, the executioners failed in an attempt to kill them in a day. That is why they were detained for execution the next day. The detention was constructed from wood with galvanised steel roof. This wall was built with 2 layers of flat wood, where to darken and also prevent prisoners seeing each other. Unfortunately, the dark and gloomy detention was dismantled in 1997. Right, that's it. I'm hot, I'm sticky, and I'm taking a tuk-tuk back into the centre of Phnom Penh.